Her father told me, "My daughter is out of your league. Sign over the house and leave." I just handed him a folder. He opened it, turned pale, and told his daughter to start packing. For the last year, I've felt like a guest in my own life. I'm 35, I run a logistics company I built from the ground up, and I own my home. It's a nice place, modern, with lots of glass and clean lines. I bought it with my own money 2 years before I even met my wife, Chloe. When she moved in after we got married, it was supposed to become our home. But lately, it's felt more like her hotel, and I was the guy who paid the bills. Chloe comes from a family that talks a lot about their good name and their history in the city. Her father, Richard, is a real piece of work, always talking about the good old days when his property development business was booming. The truth is, his business has been circling the drain for years, but they keep up appearances. Expensive cars, country club memberships, designer clothes. It's all a show, and I've been the one unknowingly funding the production. The disrespect started small. Little comments about my workman's hands or my lack of a fancy college degree. Then Chloe started treating me less like a husband and more like a service provider. There was no more we. It was, "I need a new car," or "My dad thinks we should invest in this," which was always some garbage idea that would line his pockets. Her spending was out of control. Thousands of dollars a month on clothes she'd wear once, lunches with friends, spa days. I tried to talk to her about it, but she'd just pout and say, "Are you saying I don't deserve nice things?" The final switch flipped about 6 months ago. I started noticing things. The way her father would look at my house, not like a guest, but like he was measuring the drapes. The way Chloe would talk about the future. It was always her future, her plans. I was just the guy who was supposed to make it all happen. It was a cold feeling, realizing you're not a partner, you're just a resource being drained. So I did what I do in my business when I suspect a supplier is trying to screw me over. I started doing my homework. I hired a quiet, very expensive firm to do a full financial workup on Richard's company. Then I hired a private investigator to look into Chloe's daily life. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. I just had a bad feeling, and I don't ignore my gut. The ambush came last Saturday. Chloe had told me her dad wanted to come over to discuss our future. I knew this was it. They sat across from me in my living room, the one I paid for. Richard did all the talking, his voice full of fake charm. Chloe just sat there next to him, looking bored and entitled, like a queen waiting for her subjects to get on with it. "Liam," Richard started, "Chloe is a special girl. She comes from a good family, a certain background. She has needs, expectations." He leaned forward. "Frankly, she's out of your league. You've done well for yourself for a guy like you, but you can't give her the life she's truly accustomed to." I just sat there, listening. I didn't say a word. "She's not happy," he continued, gesturing to Chloe, who was examining her manicure. "This marriage was a mistake. But we're reasonable people. We're not going to drag this through the mud. We've discussed it, and we have a simple, clean solution." He slid a single piece of paper across the coffee table. It was a quitclaim deed, the legal document used to transfer property ownership. "My property. You're going to sign the house over to Chloe," Richard said, his voice now hard, all the fake charm gone. "It's the least you can do for the pain you've caused her. You'll pack a bag, and you'll leave. We'll handle the divorce quietly. No lawyers, no mess. You just walk away." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at Chloe. She finally met my eyes, and her expression was pure ice. There was no sadness, no regret, just cold, hard greed. This was their plan all along. To use me, drain my resources, and then try to take my biggest asset and discard me like trash. The crazy part is, they thought it would work. They genuinely believed I was so blinded by her that I would just roll over and give them everything. They saw me as a simple man, a workhorse they could ride until I dropped. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at them, a lifetime of disrespect culminating in this one insane moment. The feeling in my chest wasn't heartbreak. It was the calm, quiet hum of a machine powering on. "I see," I said, my voice completely level. "Give me 1 second." I stood up and went to my study. I could hear Richard whispering to Chloe, "See? He knows his place. He's scared." I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a simple, thick manila folder. I walked back into the living room. Richard and Chloe were both smiling now, smug and victorious. I didn't say anything. I just placed the folder on the coffee table in front of Richard, right next to the quitclaim deed. "What's this?" he asked, annoyed. "Your bank statements? We don't care." "You should look," I said quietly. He snatched the folder, irritated. He opened it. His smug expression didn't just vanish, it was wiped clean, replaced by a ghastly, gray pallor. His hands started to shake. He looked at the first page, then the second, his eyes growing wider and wider with sheer, abject terror. He started to sweat. He looked up at me, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. The arrogant man from 5 minutes ago was gone. In his place was a terrified, broken old man who had just realized he'd picked a fight with a lion. Chloe was confused. "Dad, what is it? What's wrong?" Richard didn't answer her. He couldn't. He just stared at me, then back at the folder. He dropped it on the table as if it were on fire. He turned to his daughter, his voice a choked, panicked whisper. "Start packing, Chloe. Now. Update 1. It's been a week since the confrontation. The silence in my house is the best thing I've ever heard. Thanks for the comments and messages. A lot of you were asking what was in the folder. It wasn't just one thing. It was a complete and total destruction of their entire world, laid out in black and white. When Richard opened that folder, he wasn't looking at a legal argument. He was looking at his own ruin. The first section was the financial analysis of his company that I had commissioned. It was brutal. It showed with forensic detail that his business was a house of cards. He was over-leveraged, insolvent, and months away from total collapse. But that wasn't the worst part. The last page of that section was a list of all his major business debts, the loans he'd taken out to keep his failing company afloat. And next to each loan was the name of the holding company that currently owned the debt. A company called North Star Holdings. He had never heard of it. I know, because I created it 3 months ago. I had spent a significant amount of my own capital to quietly buy up all his debt from the original lenders. With one phone call, I could call in those debts and bankrupt him in an afternoon. Not just his business. Him, personally. Everything he had left, including their precious family home, was collateral. The second section was the private investigator's report on Chloe. It was thick. It had everything. Itemized receipts of her spending on my credit cards, which totaled a staggering amount over the last year. It had photos of her at lavish lunches, laughing with her friends. But then it got worse. The report detailed her reconnecting with an old boyfriend from a wealthy family. It wasn't a passionate affair. It was a business transaction. The PI had transcripts of text messages between Chloe and her friend where she described the guy as her backup plan. She wrote, "Liam is getting so boring with his talk about budgets. I need an escape route in case the money dries up." There were photos of them meeting at hotels, not for romance, but for what looked like interviews. She was auditioning her next victim. The final section was the most direct. It contained 2 documents. The first was a draft of a lawsuit against Richard for fraudulent misrepresentation based on several investment opportunities he had pushed on me over the years, which the financial analysis proved he knew were worthless. The second was a finalized divorce petition, ready to be filed, citing Chloe's infidelity and blatant financial exploitation. So when Richard looked at that folder, he saw his entire life in my hands. His business, his home, his reputation, all gone. He saw his daughter exposed as a faithless, conniving gold digger. He saw that his attempt to intimidate me had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. He hadn't come to my house to negotiate. He'd walked into a perfectly laid trap. His command to Chloe to start packing was a desperate act of self-preservation. Chloe, of course, didn't get it. She started screaming. "Packing? What are you talking about? We had a deal. He was supposed to leave." Richard just grabbed her by the arm, his face ashen. "Shut up, Chloe. Just shut up and listen to me. It's over. The whole thing is over." I stood up. "Your father is right," I said calmly. "It's over." I looked at Chloe. "I want you out of my house in 24 hours. You can take your clothes, your personal effects, and nothing else. If you are still here tomorrow afternoon, I will have you removed for trespassing." She lunged at me then, trying to slap me, but Richard held her back. It was pathetic. I walked over to the table and picked up my phone. I logged into my banking app. All of your supplementary credit cards have been canceled, I said, showing her the screen. Your access to the joint account has been revoked. The car I bought you is in my name. The keys are to be left on the counter before you leave. From this moment on, you are on your own. The next 24 hours were a blur of her raging and her father desperately trying to get her to just comply. She tried to argue about furniture, art, jewelry. I had receipts for everything. Anything I had ever bought her, I considered a gift, and I let her take it. But anything that was part of my home stayed. They left yesterday afternoon. Her father had to hire a cheap moving van to take her stuff to his house. She walked out without looking at me, her face a thunderous mask of hatred. She had come to my home to take it from me, and she left with nothing but a few suitcases and the bitter taste of defeat. The first thing I did after they were gone was call a cleaning service for a deep clean of the entire house. I wanted every trace of them gone. Then I called my lawyer. File the divorce papers, I said. First thing in the morning. Update 2. It's been a month. The divorce was finalized last week. It was one of the fastest, most one-sided divorces my lawyer had ever seen. Chloe and Richard, knowing what I had on them, didn't fight a single thing. They were terrified. Chloe's lawyer made a few weak attempts at demanding alimony, but we shut that down immediately. We sent him a single, redacted page from the PI report detailing her backup plan boyfriend. We made it clear that if she pushed for anything, the full, unredacted report would become public record in the court filing. The demands for alimony stopped that same day. In the end, she walked away with nothing. No house, no car, no money. Just the jewelry and clothes I had let her take. But I wasn't done. The revenge wasn't just about getting rid of Chloe. It was about dismantling the entire rotten system that created her. It was about holding Richard accountable. 2 weeks ago, I had my lawyer call in his debts. As expected, he couldn't pay. His company immediately went into default, but I didn't bankrupt him. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, I offered him a deal. I would personally oversee a restructuring of his company. I would inject my own capital to keep it from going under. In exchange, I took a 90% controlling stake in the company. Richard is still the president of his company, in name only. He still goes to the office every day, but he's no longer the boss. I am. He answers to me. He has to provide me with weekly financial reports. He has to get my approval for any expenditure over $500. I took his life's work, the source of all his pride and arrogance, and turned it into his own personal prison. I see the reports every Friday. The company is already starting to turn a small profit under my management. It was never a bad business, just a horribly managed one. The financial fallout for their family has been catastrophic. To cover his personal debts, Richard had to sell their big family home, the one he was so proud of. I heard they moved into a small, rented townhouse in a middle-class suburb. The country club membership is gone. The fancy cars have been repossessed. The entire facade they spent their lives building has crumbled to dust. I got a call last week from a mutual acquaintance. They had seen Chloe. She's working as a hostess at a restaurant downtown. The same kind of place she used to spend hundreds of my dollars at for lunch. The friend said she looked miserable, that her expensive clothes looked out of place, and that she spent her entire shift looking bitter and angry. The quiet satisfaction of that news was immense. This wasn't some emotional, angry rampage. It was a calculated, logical response to a threat. They declared war on me, assuming I was a soft target. They found out I had better weapons, better intelligence, and a much better strategy. They tried to take my house, and in the process they lost their own. They called me out of their league, and I ended up owning their league, the stadium, and the entire team. I'm sitting in my living room right now. It's quiet, clean. It feels like my home again. The money I spent on the PI and the financial analysis was the best investment I've ever made. It wasn't just about protecting my assets. It was about taking back my life from people who thought they had a right to it. They didn't just lose their money, they lost their power. And for people like them, that's a fate worse than death. Final update. It's been about 6 months now since my life took a sharp, unexpected turn. I wanted to post one final update to close this chapter completely. The dust has settled, and the new reality for everyone involved has become permanent. My life is quiet now, and incredibly productive. Free from the constant drama and financial drain of Chloe and her family, I've been able to focus entirely on my business, which is expanding faster than I ever thought possible. I also took over Richard's company, and after a few months of restructuring and cutting away all the fat, it's actually a solid, profitable enterprise. I installed a new management team, and I'm mostly a silent partner now. Richard is still there, in a small office with no window, pushing paper. I see him on my quarterly visits to the office. He never makes eye contact. He just looks old and defeated. That's a more fitting punishment than bankruptcy ever could have been. I've made my house my own again. I sold off some of the fussy, ornate furniture Chloe had insisted on and replaced it with things that are more my style. Simple, functional, and comfortable. It feels like a sanctuary now, a place of peace. The most satisfying part of this whole ordeal is seeing the consequences land exactly where they belong. The other day, I had a dinner meeting with some clients at a high-end restaurant downtown. And there she was, Chloe. She wasn't a hostess anymore. She was a waitress. She was wearing the standard black uniform and she looked exhausted. She was assigned to our section, but she didn't see me at first. When she came to our table to take our drink order, she looked up and our eyes met. For a second, her professional smile froze. A flash of pure, unadulterated hatred crossed her face, followed immediately by a wave of humiliation. Her face turned bright red. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I didn't say a word to her. I just gave her a small, polite nod, as if she were a complete stranger. I treated her exactly like what she was, the person who was there to take my order. I turned back to my clients and continued our conversation. She had to serve our table for the next 2 hours. She had to bring me my food, refill my water, and ask me if I wanted dessert. She had to watch me conduct a multi-million-dollar business deal at the same table where she used to burn through my money without a second thought. Every time she came to the table, she was shaking slightly. It was the most brutally uncomfortable and quietly validating 2 hours of my life. When we were done, I paid the bill. I left a tip, a standard, polite 20%. Not a penny more, not a penny less. It wasn't a punishment, and it wasn't a reward. It was just a transaction, because that's all our relationship ever was to her. She gambled. She and her father looked at me and saw a walking ATM, a stepping stone to the life they felt they deserved. They thought they could just take what was mine and throw me away. But they miscalculated. They didn't understand that I built my life by being smarter, more prepared, and more ruthless in business than my competitors. I just applied the same principles to my personal life when they forced my hand. She wanted a man in her league. Now she's serving dinner to men who are in mine. That's not revenge. That's just a consequence. A perfect, logical, and deeply satisfying consequence. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. It's time to move on to bigger and better things.